Hello, thanks for checking out my channel. If you clicked on my face and you thought, hey, look at this guy, I bet he knows a lot about movies, you were wrong. But you should stay here anyway. Actually, I think I do kind of know. I mean, I have like a degree on a wall that doesn't really do anything for me, but it made me feel like I should be yet another white YouTuber, male, male white YouTuber on here talking about films. So I'm going to talk about past lives, and you're going to click that subscribe button. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com. I'm a blind film critic. So that's where we differ, because I'm going to talk about past lives from the ability of, oh crap, I can't see the cinematography. Where is the camera? I have no idea. So, I get to see this through a lovely technological advancement called audio description, which tells me what's going on the screen. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let's talk about this film, which is quite likely going to be a Best Picture nominee. And I will say, when I went into this film, knowing that, it kind of raised the bar a little bit. I kind of was expecting to have my mind blown. Unfortunately, the people on YouTube have kind of ruined this for me, because there's no, like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. There's just a whole lot of people out there that are like, oh my god, it's like I've never seen a movie before until I saw Past Lives. You know? I have one of the critics that I subscribe to and have for a while, and I think he's a pretty good critic, like, declared in mid-June that this was his best picture of the year, and it didn't matter what was coming out later. Like, he just immediately wrote off films that he hadn't seen, and he was like, this is it. I refuse to consider anything else the best picture for the year. I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, that's selfish. I mean, I think it's better that if you see it in June and then still see 50 more movies and you still feel that connected to past lives, great. That's a good sign. That means the film really hit you. But if you're just gonna, like, turn your ears off and la 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 la, you know, like, why are you here? It's just so. It's a nice contained story. This feels like it's the before sunrise of our generation in many ways. It doesn't take place in the same sort of span of time, but it has that sort of thought about relationships that Before Sunrise offered, before it became, like, you know, Before Sunset and Before Midnight, and then it became like the trilogy of films. Like, I could see Past Lives having those follow-ups. There is definitely a door that is opened to kind of explore that in sort of like a Before Sunset type of way. Years later from now, they could come back around to it with the same cast and tackle it and have sort of maybe even more or something else to say about these characters and how we live our lives. The film basically is about a young girl living in Korea who is about to immigrate to America with her family, and they're talking about choosing their American names. They're going to Americanize their names to make everything easier. And, you know, they're fighting over names, and she really likes Michelle, but then somebody suggests Nora, so of course she becomes Nora. And then she also has a crush on a boy while she's still in Korea that's in her class, and they kind of go on this date, and it's a really well described date. They go to this art installation type thing. There's a statue with I was like, there's a statue whose mouth moves? I was like, are we in a theme park? I was like, is this Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple? Like, what's happening here? Like, what is going on? But it was so well described, and they talked about using negative space in this art installation, and I was just like, wow, this is great. Some great audio description from Jedediah Barton and his team there, but it reminded me so much of, and I think this is why it's hitting people so hard, of the relationships we had as kids. Because even though I don't necessarily have somebody that I was like, oh my God, I'm in love with you and we're going to be together forever, I don't have that person, you know, that first love that I feel like now as an adult that I want to track down and find. I do have really good friends that, like, for like a period of time, I was like inseparable with somebody, and I haven't talked to them in years. And so when the film starts getting into this, they grow up and they separate. And one time they happen to look up each other on Facebook, and they kind of see what they're doing, and they try to contact, and he's trying to contact her, but he didn't really realize what she had changed her name to, so he was kind of looking for her father first. And so she doesn't realize that he's reached out to her until after a couple months after he's actually done it. But yeah, she's kind of, her life has changed and she's moved on, and she's married now. She's a playwright in America, and she's married to John Magaro's character. And they're pretty happy together. But they don't seem like overwhelmingly happy. They seem sort of like realistically happy. That's what Celine Song does really well here with her script and her direction, is that it's slice of life, but it's slice of life done right. Recently I saw You Hurt My Feelings, and Nicole Holofcener did sort of the same thing, where it just felt very realistic. But I did have like a couple problems with the way she presented things, with the way that it's like, if I've been around you that long, why would I suddenly point that out this late in the game? This kind of feels like we really are dropping in on people who are at a certain point in their life. There isn't really a need to give you a ton of exposition. It's sort of about being in the moment and talking to somebody and catching up. Eventually, her former teen heartthrob, who is now a grown man, played by Teo Yu, flies out to New York and visits her, and they walk around and they have these conversations, and he meets John Magaro, and John is so welcoming. John Magaro is like relationship goals. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are going to watch this film, they're going to take John Magaro's picture and they're going to put it on their vision board. They're just going to be like, this dude is not jealous. He's not like I've seen so many films where somebody comes in from somebody else's past and the guy just gets like really protective, and just, it's like he's like a male dog peeing on his territory, like marking his territory. This isn't like that at all. This guy's not that, he's not a control freak. He has no desire to control or restrain his wife. He's like, yeah, great. This is your friend from your childhood. You should spend time with him. They spend a little bit of time together as like a throuple. There's no sex in this, by the way. So when I say throuple, I don't mean like bow chicka bow wow. But it's very nice how everything is laid out in this film. Conversations they had. A lot of this is in Korean, so a lot of this is dubbed for me through the English audio description because I can't read the subtitles. I thought the dubbing was done really well. The audio description track chooses to have Jedediah Barton do the narration, and then it has individual actors performing the Korean translation into English for each one of the actors. So I know Laura Post was one of them. And I think that worked out really well. So that was nice because it felt like a different person on each character. It wasn't quite to the point of hiring professional voiceover actors like we do sometimes. I would say heavily we do it in anime, because anime premieres originally in Japanese and then we get an English voiceover cast, sometimes with some really big names to do the voiceover work. It wasn't quite like at that level, but it did really work for me. And I think this film rests best in the simplicity. Everything about Celine Song's script, to her direction, to her score, everything, all of the choices that she makes when she assembles this film, puts it together. It's not even that long of a film. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. So everything about it is to sort of highlight just these characters and their relationship. There really aren't a lot of side characters. Like, she has parents that she talks to a little bit and are in the movie for a brief instance in time, but it's really just about these three people. And actually, I would say the secondary, if I had to go to who are fourth and fifth in the cast, it would be the younger versions of Teo Yu's character and of Nora in this film. So those would be the two characters that really stand out for me. I know people really want this nominated for Oscars. I don't know. It feels very simplistic. It's very much the opposite of Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it's funny that this is the A24 film of the year that everybody has gotten behind, because it's totally different. I mean, it may feature Asian leads in the film, but it's very much the opposite. I would take kids to see this. Like, if I had a teenager that was like really interested in film, I would have no problem with them seeing Past Lives. There's nothing really here that's gonna shock or awe them. Nothing really disturbing or it doesn't get sexual or anything like that. It's just kind of simplistic. And it's that slice of life that reminds me so much of Linklater's films, of how back in the day with Before Sunrise, he just kind of walked around with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy and a camera. And that was the film. You know, that was just kind of the film. It was just like, we'll have a conversation about this moment in time. And there's a part of the film when Teo Yu's in New York, it just kind of feels like that's what this is. It just has more of a narrative structure to it, because it's establishing the childhood all the way through to the adults. So when I see a lot of these grown men who look a lot like me, because I've seen some of them, I used to be able to see, so I've subscribed to some of these YouTube channels for years. There are some people here on YouTube who have been critics for like at least 10 years. So I do know what some of them look like. So there are a lot of white male critics on YouTube. It's an epidemic. I do think my perspective is completely different than all of theirs, but I do still listen to them. Among others, my shit's diverse. Don't judge me. So I have a very diverse group. It's hard not to have white critics because there's so many of them. But they're all like really genuinely moved by this film, and they really loved it. And I think what they love about it is what Celine Song has tapped into is the fact that regardless of who it is, there's somebody from your childhood that you miss, and that this film reminds you that. I bet a lot of people got on Facebook after this and looked somebody up, tried to find somebody. The problem is some of these people have really basic names, and maybe they moved and you're not really sure where they moved. So it becomes sort of like almost like you have to hire a private detective to find some of these people. But yeah, it's and then you're like, do I reach out? Do I do what you know what Taylor Yu does here? And he posts openly, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for this girl that I used to know. And then she sees it, and she's like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. And then it kind of starts this relationship back and forth, and it's like when they see each other, they're trying to pick up where they left off, but they're two totally different people now. And she has a husband that she loves, and she's kind of moved on, and he just happens to be in a place where it's like he would have loved to explore this relationship, but he can't. So he just has to kind of get to see what he missed out on. And they talk a lot about past lives. Comes across in the conversation sort of about in the world of, if you believe in like reincarnation and like in the next life, you know, how sometimes people will say something, even if they don't believe in it, somebody will say something like, well, in the next life I'll be that, or in a past life I was, you know, the king of France. Something like that. That's kind of where it comes from, that conversation, is the wondering of, you know, at any point in future lives, will their paths cross again? You know, will he get it right? So, not that it really matters because you wouldn't remember it, but it does pose a lot of really interesting questions. And I'm really impressed. This is a writer-director debut, so this is something that we should be, I don't want to say grading on a curve, but I feel like when you see something like this that has such a very specific tone and voice to it, and it's from somebody who doesn't have the depth of work to back them up, it's just a little bit more impressive. So I don't love this film, though. I have to say, I did feel like it was kind of dragging. I also don't really love Linklater's Before Sunrise series for the same reason. I kind of like, at a certain point, I mean, I can appreciate it for what it is and the filmmaking that it takes to make it, but if you're asking me, do I think there are better films that are made this year? Sure, I do. But at the same time, I think there's something special here that leads me to believe that there's a future for Celine Song in this industry, and that she will continue to make films that will challenge us in unique ways, and that'll make us look internally to ourselves like this one does, and ask us, what about those people from our childhood? What about those connections? We now have the social media tools to be able to make things happen. What do we do with it when it happens? John Magaro in this film is almost too adorable. He's like the nicest guy on the face of the planet. He has this conversation with Greta Lee, where he's like, I'll just paraphrase it. He's basically just like, you know, you're just the center of my world, and you light up my life, but do I do the same for you? You know, and he's concerned that he's not enough for her, and not in a way that he's concerned about Taylor Yu. He's just concerned about that in general. He's just like, he's worried that even though she means the world to him, and she's, you know, his driving force and everything and all that stuff, he wants to know that he has fulfilled her in the same way. And it kind of lingers on that question, like you know, does she feel the same way? Is she as passionate about that statement as possible? I don't know who would be nominated out of this film. I really don't. It's such a quiet film. It's very simplistic, and it's very realistic. It feels like these people were real people that just happened to be followed for a documentary, and then we turned it into a movie. And there's a skill level in that. And I'm not going to shut that down. But I've seen films I loved this year that I truly loved, and I want to be down the door and like try to get people to see them. This is not that for me. This is a film that impressed me, but not for the reasons that everybody else seems to be enamored with the film. Audio description wise, again, as I said, Jedediah Barton's audio description is really good. Probably the best example of that is the weird art installations. I don't know what even to call it. The statues, and I don't know where they were, but Celine Song definitely found a place over in Korea and was like, we need to shoot here. This is amazing. It sounded amazing as they were trying to describe it. I was like, where is this place? What is this? I did get kind of confused in some places with the audio description. It did slightly let me down. There's a part where Tae-yu he's with a group of friends in Korea. The whole thing is in Korean, and they're talking back and forth. And somebody has just been dumped. I think it was Tae-yu's character. And what I did love about this is that it shows, and it allowed, and there wasn't anybody that was badgering him for crying, but it allowed a man to show emotion without the need, without that feeling of like, well, if I do it, then suddenly I'm not masculine anymore. So I thought that was a really good scene. I had a hard time following who it was that was broken up with, and then there's a moment where somebody's getting a text message and they're ignoring it. And I think it's the notifications that are coming from Nora's phone. So I didn't know if that was all Tae-yu or if it was his friends. Do you know what I'm saying? Or if Tae-yu was a friend who was helping another friend through a breakup. I did get actually lost in that scene. So not everything was all fun and games for me throughout the film. However, I did think the narration was mostly good. Just that one scene, I just realized, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. The rest of it is fine. I think it's funny that he gets up in the morning and he has soup for breakfast. I love that. I'm just like, you know what, in other cultures, I mean, breakfast is what we tell people it is. So in other cultures, maybe breakfast is soup. You know? But that's what it is. You wake up in the morning and you have some soup. I'm sure in other countries, they wake up in the morning and they're just happy that they have food. Over here, we're like, oh, pancakes, waffles, eggs, bacon, oatmeal. It's got to be one of these approved food lists. But over in Korea, I just need some broth in the morning to get me going. And those sort of cultural differences. So I would love to see more past lives. It's not that I didn't like this film, it's just that I didn't love it. So I feel like I'm going to get trolled by A24 fans. Every time I don't like an A24 film quite as much as they do, I always feel like somebody's going to come in and be like, I hate you, and I've found out where you live, and I'm coming for you. And I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. This is not a terrible grade for a film. I'm just basically letting you know in advance, this is not in my top 10 for the year. I think it's great that it's in yours. I think this is a film that's going to hit people differently. I think there'll be people who will absolutely be hit by this film and will get incredibly emotional, and it works for them. I think that's great if you're one of those people. But if you're not one of those people, I think it should be okay for us to say the film was good but not great. So yeah, I definitely was more impressed with last year's After Sun, for example. As a film, I thought After Sun just had a little bit more style and a little bit something different to say, also from a first-time feature director. So I'm really glad that A24 exists and that we get that excited about A24 films, because it seems to be like we're really pushing indie cinema into the mainstream through A24. So I think what they do as a distributor is excellent, because without them, I don't know if people would be this obsessed with these types of films. Past Lives feels like the kind of film that if A24 hadn't picked it up and it had gone to a different distributor, we would never even know about it. If this had been, Roadside Attractions or whoever the hell distributed To Leslie, I don't think we would be talking about it. So anyway, now you guys want to know what grade I'm giving it. The performances are good. I'm not really sure that I would consider anybody the best of the year, but I think they're all good performances. They might be in my top 10 for the year, but none of them will ever be number one. I feel like I've seen at least one performance this year that has been stronger in Best Actor, Actress, and Supporting Actor. So it'll be interesting to see where I put them. I liked all of them. I thought they all did a good job. I think this is a great debut from Celine Song, and I think I don't know where else we stand in terms of debut direction, but if she doesn't win that DGA trophy this year, I'll be shocked for Best First Feature. And I really think that this could be, even though I'm not giving this an A grade, I think that this could be the next thing like Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise films, which I also would not have given an A grade to. Doesn't mean they don't have value. It just means that they're kind of like in a different place for me in terms of films. So, I wouldn't mind seeing Past Lives 7 years from now, a sequel to this, a follow-up where they explore being even at a different place. Maybe they haven't talked in 7 years. I think there are so many possibilities with how they left things here that I think what Celine did is great. It's just it's a little slow for me, and it was almost too worried about being as realistic as humanly possible. So, if that makes any sense at all, I'm giving Past Lives a B+. Not a bad grade. It's not bad. When I got B+ in high school, I was pretty excited. So yeah, that's my grade for Past Lives. Sorry, it's not going to be in my top 10 for the year. Oddly enough, I did buy this on iTunes, so I own it forever, and I can revisit it. I might even revisit it around the time of the Oscars, depending on how many times it gets nominated. Since I'm seeing it so early, I could easily revisit it for the Oscars, and maybe it'll hit me harder. I don't know. But considering all the people who told me they sobbed throughout this entire movie, I just feel like I missed something. I just feel like maybe it's because I wasn't thinking about it as I missed the romantic connection from my past as so much as I was like, man, I really miss my best friends from childhood who I haven't talked to in years. Like platonic friends. But it very much reminded me of that. So, a really solid debut. I think these actors will probably end up getting some work because they were in this film. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I do have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can follow me on X, Threads, and Instagram at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the Audio Description Project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what is audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org. That's the ADNA.org. It'll let you know who is narrating your favorite films and television shows. You can also look up Jedediah Barton and see what else he's narrated. So, that's it for me today. I will review something else and see you guys on the other side.